All right, we're going to call this Finance Committee meeting to order. Present are council members Cost, Bob, Blake, Labuda sitting in for Frazier and Marmee. First item on the agenda is an ordinance 19-03 to provide for the issuance and sale of water system revenue bonds in the amount not to exceed $17 million and 0 cents for the purpose of paying costs of improvements to the utility, of discharging at maturity notes of the city, hereinfore issued for the purpose authorizing and supplement trust agreement and other documents relating to the Series 2019 bonds and declaring an emergency.
Revenue bonds are something that we've been planning on for quite some time. And as you'll recall, I've been before this committee a few times organizing the due dates of some bond anticipation notes that fall in line with the planned date of this revenue bond. So anyway, this will be the city's first revenue bond. What it will do is it will remove water, sewer, and stormwater from our general obligation category, and they will be standalone bonds, which will free up our ability to borrow on a general obligation basis.
Very good.
Motion.
Second. Motion by Bub, second by Cost. Questions and or discussion?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Charles, what was this? This is just all the downtown. What projects are included in this?
Well, this is the Downtown Square project, which is $4 million of this. Then there was an additional $1 million in another water project and a second $1 million in another water project, which takes it to $6 million. And then there's something that I don't know a lot about. Roger Loomis could explain it. It's something that they call the Tamarack project, and it's going to be roughly $10 million.
Any further questions and or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. The motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is revenue bonds. Continuation of this for the water system.
This is a companion piece, and it's what's known as a master indenture or a master trust agreement. And basically what it says is the city intends to issue additional revenue bonds from time to time. And in doing so, we will continue operating as a public utility. We will segregate the revenues for the utility. We'll continue to provide officials to oversee the operation, and will abide by all regulations as required. It's a companion piece with the revenue bonds.
Motion. Second.
Motion by Bub, second by Cost. Questions and or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. That motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is a request for appropriation in the amount of $7,069.44 for the JAG grant fund.
This is the appropriation for overtime, so we could pay for overtime for the NARI program officers.
Motion.
I have a motion by Bub.
Second.
Second by Labuda. Questions and or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The motion passes 5-0. Then we have the city's match, a request for appropriation in the amount of $706.94 for that same.
Motion.
Motion by Bub.
Second.
Second by Cost. Questions and or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. The motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing and directing the mayor of the city of Newark to enter into partnership with Heritage Ohio to apply for fiscal support from the Ohio Historic Connection Certified Local Government Grant for federal fiscal year 2019.
Yeah, good evening.
Good evening.
Like the preamble says, Basically, the City of Newark, which is a certified local government, would like to enter into a certified local government grant application with the Ohio History Connection. And it's in partnership with Heritage Ohio, because Heritage Ohio is going to be having their annual conference here in the city of Newark on October 21st to the 23rd this year. So it's pretty exciting to have that event being held here in Newark. With that event, the Heritage Ohio group is going to incur some expenses, and they'd like to use the grant monies to help defer some of those costs for that event in October. And they cannot apply on their own. They have to use a certified local government to help them make that application. So that's what we're doing here.
Make a motion.
Have a motion by Bub,
Second.
second by Cost. Questions and/or discussion? So this is pretty much just like a pass-through type thing. We don't have to match or do anything like that for this grant, do we?
Great question. There is a match, but the Heritage Ohio will take care of that.
Okay.
And they're only asking for about $5,500 from the grant to help cover the expenses for the keynote speaker that'll be coming into Newark those couple of days.
Okay.
Okay.
Very good. Yes.
Mark, what's the date again?
Sure. October 21st, 22nd, and 23rd.
Thanks.
And Barbara just reminded me, we need to have the second reading waived for this. We're on a deadline to meet the grant application.
I changed it on the paperwork to expedite
Great.
it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any further questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. That motion passes 5-0. Thank you very
Thank you.
much. Next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing and directing the mayor of the city of Newark to prepare and submit applications to the U.S. EPA for fiscal year 2019 Clean Diesel Funding Assistance Program.
This is a new opportunity. We're not firm whether we're going to pursue it or not. There's going to be a webinar, but the timing is such I want to get it through if it is something that we have a decent opportunity at.
Okay.
And this pertains to Buster's big dump trucks. We're going to try and apply for funding for additional trucks.
Very good. Questions? I've got a motion by Bub.
Second.
Second by Cost. Questions or discussion? And if there was a match, it would probably come out of capital improvements, correct? On anything like that.
Oh,
And
definitely.
the way that we look at that is any money we get would help pay for one of those would be fantastic.
True.
Yeah.
True.
So, very good. Any other questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. That motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And with that, this Finance Committee meeting stands adjourned.
All right, we'll call the Service Committee meeting to order. Those present are myself, Rath, Cost, Bub, Blake, and Lang. First item to discuss is consider substance of discussion. Resolution number 1912, determining that the important improvement should be made to properties in the abutting Fairway Estates subdivision and along Horns Hill Road by upgrading the existing sanitary sewer system and installing a new gravity sewer system and the necessary appurtenances thereto and declaring an emergency. Mr. Moorhead, you have the floor.
Thank you. The piece of legislation before you is required as part of the Ohio Revised Codes procedure on the assessment process here. And consulting with the law director last week and Roger Loomis, utilities superintendent. So back in May, the end of May last year, we filed an estimated assessment with council. And we opened bids on the project on January 14th. This was the second bidding. The first bid process could not be awarded due to the higher cost of the bid as opposed to the estimate. This bid that was opened a couple of weeks ago also exceeds the estimated cost that was filed by about 22%. Revised code says that if the project is 15% or lower, it can be awarded without coming to council. But since we're over that 15%, we need to come to council with this piece of legislation to move the project forward. The petition also that was submitted by the property owners up there limits the amount of overage to 15% over that original estimate. So basically we've got a project that's 22% higher, so that's extra 7% cost, construction cost, will be picked up by the utilities department at this point. The thought is that basically we're so far along with this project, we really need to move it forward, and we need to get it to construction as soon as possible. So Roger has freed up some additional funds to put towards the project and able to move it forward. So if you move this piece of legislation onto council at the next meeting, it also requires a public hearing to be held. So we would set up a meeting, a public hearing at the beginning of the council meeting on February 22nd, I believe is the next. 19th? Okay. Is the next meeting. So you'd have a public hearing at the beginning. Next week we would send out notices to all the property owners up there to invite them to that public meeting if they care to voice any opposition or objection to moving the project forward. And then we would ask for a vote later on at that meeting. So.
Okay, so the way I understand this is 15% of the overage of the bid will be assessed to the property owners. The additional 7% is going to be picked up by our utilities company. Is that accurate?
I believe that's accurate. No.
You look as confused as me.
Well, I'm trying to replay your words.
So the bid was for, let's say the bid was for $10 million.
Okay.
And it came in at another 22%, which is going to be $12.2 million.
Okay.
Okay. Who pays the extra $2.2 million?
Let me go backwards and put it in different numbers to you. Our construction cost estimate that we filed with council back in May, at the end of May, called for $650,000 in construction costs.
Okay.
With that, we could assess 15% over that cost, which ends up being, I didn't write the number down.
Whatever the number is.
Whatever the number is.
That's why I used 10, because it was simple.
Our current number is 22% over that cost.
Okay.
So the only amount that we can assess to the property owners, a maximum amount, is 15%.
Okay.
The remaining amount will be picked up by the utilities department and paid. So the estimated assessment that we had for each property was $4,168.20. If you take 15% greater than that, the assessment would be $4,793.
Okay.
Now, again, these are all based on construction estimates at this point. By the time we get done with the project, the costs are all going to be different because, we may have some underages, we may have some overages, but the basis for assessing the cost will be the actual costs at the end of the project, not the estimated cost. So, again, the highest that assessment could be is $4,793.
Regardless of overages, right?
Excuse me?
Regardless of the
overages, or
okay.
If it happens to come under and we can get it less than 15%, of course we'll do our best to do that.
Okay. Any other questions from the committee?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Bud.
I will abstain from voting on resolution 1912 as I serve on that as a trustee with the Fairway Estate subdivision.
Yep. I figured that was coming. Mr. Blake.
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Moorhead, there's a development going on up on the north end of town, is that correct? Isn't there potential of some new residential homes going up?
We don't have any plans filed for anything at this point.
Okay. All right. What, is there, when the notices are going to be sent to all the residents, will it be just the Fairway Estates residents, or is it also everyone on Horns Hill Road?
It'll be the residents that signed the original petition, which I believe are the Fairway Estates residents.
But that was the second petition, though.
The second petition.
That wasn't the original.
The second petition is the one that moved forward, correct.
And then I know we're talking about numbers, and you didn't seem to have a firm grasp on but what will be the amount that comes out of Rogers' budget to pay for this? I mean, I know you probably don't have that right now, but if you could share that at some point.
Well, estimating, it's about a $40,000 extra. Again, we won't apportion that until the project's over and done and we find out what the actual construction costs are.
Okay. And then, Mr. Chairman, last question. Now, at some point, we created there's some temporary board because there's some objections from that. What was the outcome of that meeting?
The outcome was that there was one objection filed and the Assessment Equalization Board listened to that and they agreed with the objection and they removed that individual person from the assessment.
So they don't have to pay anything?
Correct.
Are there any questions from the audience? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion.
Motion by Lang. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Cost. Any further questions from anyone? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. That will pass on to council with a vote of 4-0 and 1 abstention.
Thank you.
And that concludes Service Committee. Up next will be Economic Development Committee.
All right, well, we'll call this Economic Development Committee to order. Those present are Frazier, Rath, Cost, Hall, and Lang. Before us tonight is Mark Boyd of the U.S. Census Bureau, who will be giving a presentation about the 2020 U.S. Census. So, Mr. Boyd, whenever you're ready, feel free to start the show.
Yeah, that should work. There, how's that?
Okay.
Introduce yourself.
Thank you for the introduction. Again, I'm Mark Boyd. I'm a partnership specialist with the United States Census Bureau, and thank you for inviting me. I want to especially thank Council President Ellington and Councilman Blake for reaching out to me to come and give this presentation about what's happening with the 2020 census. I want you to also know that Council President Ellington is thinking in your best interest, because he told me my presentation is usually 45 minutes, 30 to 45 minutes. He told me to keep it under 15 or he was going to kill me. So it's looking out for you guys. So if you see me skipping through a bunch of slides, you'll know why, but I think we can get the gist of the message across to you and the importance of the census. So what would I like to talk about today? I want to talk about the goal of the 2020 census. I want to talk about briefly why we do a decennial census. I want to talk about the challenges and opportunities of this new 2020 census upcoming. It's fast approaching. And I want to talk about what Newark can do to help facilitate the process and get the most complete and accurate count of the 2020 census. Okay. All right, so just a real quick, brief history of the census. The first one was under the direction of the Secretary of State Thomas Jefferson, and it began on August 2nd, 1790, and was completed by April 1791. The population at that time was about 4 million people. The United States Constitution requires that the census be conducted every 10 years to apportion the United States House of Representatives. The decennial census is the largest peacetime activity the United States federal government undertakes. I don't know how many people knew that. It's a huge and massive operation. The census will count all persons living in the United States on April 1st of the year ending 0. That includes citizens and non-citizens. The census results, including those from the American Community Survey, many of you are familiar with that as ACS, directly affects how over $675 billion is allocated to state and local governments. Also, additional money is allocated by the state that's also dependent on the census count. A little bit of background of the census. Let's see, we can skip through that one. Okay, so the census has evolved, obviously. In 1790, federal marshals on horseback counted the population for the first census, and then we've gone all the way to 2020, where the 2020 census will be the first to offer an internet response option. All right, purpose of the census is to conduct a census of the population, housing, and disseminate the results to the president, the states, and the American people. The uses of the census, there's a multitude of uses for the census. These are some of the most important ones. Obviously, apportioning representation among the states as mandated by Article 1, Section 2 of the United States Constitution. Also used for drawing congressional and state legislative districts, school districts, voting precincts. It's also used to enforce voting rights and civil rights legislation, distributing federal dollars, as I mentioned, over $675 billion of federal money that comes back to you that you paid in with your hard-earned taxes. And also it informs planning decisions of federal and local government. That's not normally mentioned a lot, but that is one of the most important reasons. It helps make decisions, important decisions about your community and where you're going to move forward to. And finally, informing organizations, businesses on where to locate, the size of the market, the size of the population, whether to relocate a business in your community or not. This is a map of the United States, obviously, with all the amount of U.S. congressional districts in each state. As you can see, as a result of the 2010 census, we have 16 U.S. congressional seats in the state of Ohio. That was down 2 from the 2000 census, where we had lost 2 as we got the 2010 census numbers. And unfortunately, it looks like we may lose 1 more seat as a result of the 2020 census. All right, the goals of the census is to count everyone once, only once, and in the right place. Let me say that again, to count everybody once, only once, and in the right place. That's the important goal of the census. And the objective is to do the 2020 census with the same high quality as we did the 2010 design. 2010 was an excellent census as far as quality and as far as accuracy. So what are some of the just major new things that are occurring with this 2020 census? So first of all, we're going to maximize outreach by using both traditional and new media. Yes, we're going to do advertising on social media, Facebook, Instagram, things like that, in addition to news and print and radio. We're offering and encouraging people to use the secure online response option. First time ever, you're going to be able to go online and quickly do your census. There's going to be some challenges, and that's going to save a lot of money, but there's going to be some challenges with that. We're providing our field workers with handheld devices for the first time ever for collecting census data. I did the 2010 census as a crew leader, and it was all paper. This is going to massively increase our productivity and save lots of money. And then we're going to utilize automated systems for recruiting, training, and payroll. Just an example of that, we're hiring through a website, 2020census.gov. Let me say that again, 2020census.gov. So everything an applicant needs to know about how to apply for the census is on that website. They can upload a resume or they can build a resume on that site. Any testing and training and everything is going to be done on that site. So those are some of the big changes. So this slide is designed for the 21st century of the 2020 census. Just walks you real quickly through what we're going to do. So we're obviously going to establish where to count. And that's going to be different this time because in the past we actually went out to every single address and mapped and geo-spotted it. Every single address. This time we're going to use data from other sources like from the post office, from governments like yours who are going to give us information on things that have been torn down or recently built. Many of you may be familiar with LUCA, Local Update of Census Addresses, where we send the Census Master Address file to you guys and you tell us what's no longer there, what's there. There's the BAS, Boundary and Annexation Survey, which your planning department probably participates in. It gives us new boundaries. All that information we're going to do in office as opposed to going out in the field and spending tons and tons of dollars physically counting each address. We're going to use satellite imagery in addition to that. Next stage, if we move it up to the top left, we're going to motivate people to respond. So we're going to maximize our outreach using traditional and new media. As I mentioned, we're going to be using social media also. And we're going to target ads to specific audiences with specific messages. Audiences that are hard to count. Audiences have specific inclinations not to participate. And we're going to work with people like you, our trusted voices in the community, to make sure that everyone in Newark knows that the census is safe, easy, and very, very important. Moving over to the top right, we're going to actually count the population. And as I mentioned before, there's going to be an internet self-response. We're hoping that over 50% of the people respond via the internet. So that's going to save thousands and thousands of, billions of dollars, actually. And but that's going to cause some challenges for maybe with connectivity in some areas, and also familiarity with the technology with some seniors. So we're going to need partners in the community like libraries and schools that have internet capabilities and computer lab terminals, and we're going to staff those and help make it easy for people to respond online. So the way that's going to happen is they're going to get an invitation in around early March of 2020 to invite them to go online and do the census. They're going to get a code along with that invitation. That code is going to map where they live. So as I mentioned, we want to count everybody once, only once, and in the right place, so that code is really important to show where they live. And then with that invitation and that code, they can do the census anywhere from any device online. So that makes it easier. If for any reason they can't, because of connectivity or unfamiliarity with technology, they can still do it by paper and they can still do it by telephone. And if all that fails, we're still going to send waves of people out to your house to make sure we get everybody counted. So if you don't want people coming to your house, you should just turn it in early. And finally, and then we're going to have people with handheld devices also, which is going to expedite the process and save money. And then the final step is release of the census results. We release them to the president on December 31st of the same year, 2020, and then we release the results to the states on April 1st of 2021. This is just a map of the regional census offices in the United States. So we went from 12 down to 6 regions from 2010 to 2020. So that's going to save lots and lots of money right there. And we're part of the Philadelphia region, which is that light green area. It includes 8 states plus the District of Columbia. Ohio area census offices, they'll be up and running in 2 waves. Wave 1 will be in Columbus. We have 1 office in Columbus under the Wave 1 operation, and that will be open either at the end of this month or next month. Wave 2, the other offices will be opening in fall, late fall of this year. And you can see the different cities. I have another slide that shows that. So this is how the area census office or the area census regions break out. You can see there's one in Cleveland, Akron, Toledo. There will be one in Mansfield, just below Cleveland and Akron, to the left of Cleveland and Akron, in Mansfield or Ashland. There's going to be one in Columbus, which just includes Franklin County. There'll be a South Point region, which is the region that this particular area is in. And there's one in Cincinnati and there's one in Dayton. These are different area census office positions that are available that we're hiring for right now. They go from the area census office manager down to the clerk level or enumerator level. Quick description of those. I won't take time to do that. There's a description of the pay scale. It's based on location, even within the state. You can go from $12 an hour to $15 an hour for our lowest position, which is a clerk. The enumerators, who are most of the people you're familiar with out in the field, goes from $14 to $19 per hour, and it goes all the way up to the area census office manager at $32.50 an hour. So not bad paying jobs. This is a timeline, an operational timeline, actually. So we'll do in-field address canvassing. I mentioned that. We're not going to be doing as much of that this year. We're going to be doing a lot of other in-office resources to do that, but that's going to occur this year, starting in August through October. We're going to have a group quarters operation to look at assessing and counting the prisons, all the institutions, senior citizen facilities, dormitories and colleges. Then the census obviously operates on April 1st. Internet self-response is shortly before that, till July of 2020. And then we go on to the non-response follow-up, which occurs between April and July of 2020. That's where we go out and talk to the people who haven't responded. So how can Newark help collaborate with the U.S. Census Bureau? Well, there's operational support and there's promotional support. One of the big things you can do is provide space that can be used for testing and onboarding of new hires and training, i.e. computer labs and libraries and schools we need to partner with. I've been working with some of the people in this area for that. We need to provide a list of residential institutions, whether they be senior citizen facilities or homeless shelters, things like that. It will help us. We have an idea of what's here already, but we need your help with that. We need to provide a list of shelters, service providers, and transient locations. And then we need you to help promote our temporary job opportunities. They are temporary, but if you're hired now, it'll be almost a 2-year job. So we have that online site, 2020census.gov, that we're recommending that you put on your social media, your city website, your newsletters, and drop that in. It's a PDF file that I might have already given to Jeremy. I'm not sure if I haven't, Jeremy. I'll get it to you. Okay, and then there's promotional support. This is my main reason for coming today. We're hoping to convince Newark, the mayor, to form a complete count committee. That's a tried and true vehicle to securing the most accurate complete count possible. I've left you some brochures on your desk there to talk more about the complete count committee, and I'm going to talk about it in a second. The second thing is to encourage census participation in newsletters, on websites, alert systems, drop-in articles. Some cities put it on their electric bill or their gas bill. There's lots of ways to get the message out and encourage census participation. All right, so a complete count committee. We affectionately call them CCCs, and it's a volunteer committee established by a state and local government and or community leaders to increase awareness about the census and motivate residents in the community to respond. So why form a complete count committee? We want to increase the response rate for residents mailing back their questionnaire through a focused neighbor-to-neighbor program. We want to utilize local knowledge, expertise, influence of each complete count committee member to design and implement a census awareness campaign targeted to the specific community, usually targeted to low response area communities, where we want to make sure we improve that response rate. And also to bring together a cross-section of community members whose focus is 2020 census awareness. And so the benefits of a complete count committee, so CCC speaks the language and knows the pulse of its community and will help ensure an accurate 2020 census count. You know best where issues in your community are and how to best count people in Newark better than the Census Bureau. That's why we need to partner with you to get that generational knowledge from you. A CCC gains valuable knowledge about the census process and develops a plan to impart that knowledge to the community, and a CCC increases participation ratio and response rate by continuing awareness of the 2020 census. So we don't need to go through that slide. So I don't know if everybody is familiar with the George Washington University study that estimates that about $1,800 per person missed in the census is lost to the community. And that's multiplied by 10 because it lasts for 10 years. So $1,800 per person is a huge amount of dollars that are missed from the federal government and even from the state back to the community, back to the state, if one single person is missed. This is a suggested CCC membership. This is just suggested. You can form the committee that works best for you, but it's appointed by usually the highest elected official in the community or their designee. And people on the committee should be heads of community organizations, representatives from faith-based organizations, heads of large universities and colleges, the superintendent of schools of a community, heads of business associations, and so on and so forth. Those are just suggestions. It's up to you how to form your complete count committee. These are some of the subcommittee types. I'm not going to go into that to save time. Okay, so the time to prepare for the census is now. It's already begun. We've already done a lot of different operations already. I mentioned LUCA. I mentioned BAS. We want to be prepared to participate, put line items in your budget. I saw a lot of budget stuff going on before I got up here. Identify human and technical resources to successfully participate. We want to coordinate your participation with overlapping city and county government. So some communities have done a joint county, city, complete count committee. Sometimes that works for a community, sometimes it doesn't. That's up to you guys. Want to identify a point person or a liaison for your complete count committee. And then you want to schedule and invite a person like me, a partnership specialist, to your first planning meeting. We will help train your committee. Once you form it, we will do like an hour or 2-hour session to train you how it operates and show you all the tools that are available from the U.S. Census Bureau to help you identify and target low response areas. We have something called ROAM, which is Response Outreach Area Mapper, and it will tell you down to the census tract what areas were low response rates in the 2010 census. So your CCC can use that information to target a message to that particular population to make sure that doesn't happen again. I looked briefly at Newark, and there's not too many bad areas, but there's a few that are in the 20 to 24% area. That's the higher the low response rate, the worse it is. So the 20 to 24, that's the percentage of people that didn't respond. That's not terrible, but we can do better. And then I mentioned this is the operational timeline. The most important things on there is opening of our area census offices. I mentioned that. The 8 offices in Ohio. The in-field address canvassing that's going to be going on in August of this year. And then, Census Day is April 1st. Internet self-response begins shortly before that. And then we're in December 31st, we're going to deliver the results to the President. And on March 31st of 2021, March 31st of 2021, we're going to deliver the results to the states so that they can use that for state districting and redistricting. So this is a chart with all the different ways the census data are used. I'm not going to go through this chart. It's in the booklet that I've given out to you. But there's just tons and tons of ways that you would never even think about that the census data is used for. So most people forget about, most people understand that it's used for apportionment and our representation. It's the way we do our democracy. But it's also used to distribute the funding, the $675 billion that I talked about. And then I think that one of the most important things is it helps us make planning and decision making. Helps us know where to build hospitals, where to do roads and bridges, how to do that bypass to prevent all that traffic jams, parks, bus stops. Allows businesses to know if they could come here, where to relocate, what the status of the community is. It's all-encompassing uses for the data. And that's about it, guys. So you can contact me. There's my contact information. And you can like us on Facebook.
Follow us on Twitter now.
Yes.
So my first
I
question...
don't even have a Twitter. I don't know what that is.
I'm sure the U.S. Census does. When it comes to jobs that are available for people in our community,
Yes.
is there a requisite to make them travel to South Point? Are they going to be based locally? Is there a requirement for transportation? What is required for those people that are going to be?
So they'll work out of their homes, and there's no requirement to go to South Point unless you want to work in that South Point office. And we don't. If you wanted a position there, it would be up to you to get there every day. But most people obviously aren't going to do that. But most of the people that will be hired in the community. They'll work at home. Transportation will need to have a viable vehicle, valid driver's license. They have to be 18 years of age or older, preferably not a felon. They'll be fingerprinted. You'll become a U.S. agent for the Census Bureau.
And then is there a cutoff time for applicants are no longer accepted?
No. They will be accepting applicants even into April after Census Day of 2020. So the earlier you get in, you'll be considered for all the positions. We're hiring recruiting assistants now. They're not so much hiring enumerators right now, but they're hiring people for census field representatives, recruiting assistants. If you want a position in that area office, you can apply for those. If you want which is closer, if you want a position in the Columbus office, you could actually apply for that in the Columbus office, which is closer to you guys.
Is there any questions from the members of committee?
How did I do on time? I didn't keep...
You did great. You did great. You didn't read every one of those bullet points. You did great.
Nobody's fallen asleep yet.
Go ahead, Jerry.
Mark, thank you for coming tonight and
Thank you, Jerry.
encouraging people to apply for these positions and to get involved. especially with the census, the amount of money that's related to how many people live in the city of Newark and make sure that all that's counted. I'm curious, now with it going to a more electronic format, because in the past you heard like the long form versus the short form. Can you speak to that, how that's like, will everyone be collecting the same amount of data when they go to people, or will it, I'm just curious about the demographic data that you're collecting.
And that's a great question, and it was a little bit confusing in the past. Some people would get a long form and some people would get a short form. So they've eliminated the long form. That is morphed into the American Community Survey. That's done year-round, every year. It samples about 3.5 million households in the nation, and it's continuous. And that's kind of part of the decennial information, but not. The decennial portion counts every single household with the short form. About 10 questions.
And the American survey is still going on in 2020?
Yes.
In conjunction with?
It started in 2005. It morphed from, so they stopped it in 2000, and it stopped it in 2010. They didn't have a long form then, and it's been going on ever since.
Okay.
It's the premier gold standard data for housing, employment, housing tenure, education. It's just a wealth of it. And you guys, I'm sure your city has used this data to help plan.
I've used the data too, it's great, so I really like it. Anybody else? Any questions from the audience? So, thank you, Mark, for coming. I really
You're
appreciate
welcome.
it.
Thank
if
you.
we can get you to send Autumn your presentation as
She
well.
has it.
Okay, and so she'll send it out to everybody. And if there's any other documents that you'd like us to have, any PDFs, feel free to pass it over to her and she can distribute it to us.
Will do. Thank you for inviting me.
Before we wrap up this committee today, I've asked Mark Martyr to come up and talk about his response. Is he out in the lobby? Come on down, Mark. You're the next contestant. And so we had a CRA meeting 2 weeks ago about the expansion to number 1. We asked for some follow-up details as far as the financial aspects. What is the cost-benefit relationship with CRAs? And so Mark was able to do some research with the auditor, and I've asked him to just come forward and do a follow-up to close the loop on that.
Well, Mr. Chair, I brought a PDF to put up on the screen for the spreadsheet. Let's see if I can find it here.
Yes.
Well, I brought you all a copy, but I thought maybe some of the people out here might want to see what we're talking about as well, so let's do it this way. One, two, three, four, five, six. 8. Ken, you might be one more stab at the spreadsheet.
I think he wants for all those to go.
Yeah, just pass it. Yeah, just pass.
Grab one.
Grab one and pass it around.
There you go.
Okay.
Did you get it? Didn't you?
You get one? That's fine. You pass one more this way, please.
All right, so it's not cooperative.
Oh, we have this. We have this.
Go ahead.
All right. So getting back to Mr. Marmy's request from our committee meeting last on the CRA number 1 expansion, he had asked the question, well, what's the return on investment for CRAs that the city is experiencing? And it was a darn good question. It's something that I'd never looked into before and hadn't really researched. So I dug into it a little bit, and the results are the spreadsheet that you have in front of you that I handed out. I'm sorry I can't get it on the screen for council chambers. But what I did is I approached it from the current and active properties that are currently realizing a tax abatement in CRA area number 1. And that's the properties you see listed on your spreadsheet. What I derived from all this is primarily in the column labeled 2018 market value. That would represent the current value of the properties being abated at this time, for a total of just under $905,000 would be the current property value. And that's their value after the investment in improvements had been made by the owners. The next column would have the properties that had not been improved, and their value then would only be the total of the column labeled 2018 taxable values. And you'll see if you run down that column totals almost $317,000. And then the next column is the total taxes currently being collected on these properties. And that total on those properties is $30,700 approximately, which is the amount that would have been collected prior to any improvements being made. So what's the difference then between what the property taxes that are being collected now at the abated rate and what they would have been if they had included their improvement value? And that's the column that you see labeled 2018 taxes foregone. So the total foregone taxes as a result of the abatement is $16,100, again, which is the amount collected prior to any improvements being made. So what does this all tell us? Well, basically, it tells us that the taxes that with those values or the property values have been increased by 53%. Okay? And that's where you're comparing the $904,000 to the $316,000. So that's a pretty significant increase of 53%. The other way I took a look at this is in the case where the abatements, if they were to expire, everything were to expire tomorrow. Okay, all the abatements that are currently in effect were to expire tomorrow, there would be an increase in taxable property valuation of just under $600,000, which is the $904,000 current market rate with the improvements, less the taxable property value before the improvements of the $317,000, which that means you have an increase of 286% on those properties. That's extremely significant. So it tells me that I think the CRAs are working, they're working effectively, and they're having a very positive net effect on the city's economy. And, it's a short-term deferment for a long-term gain. These tax abatements typically last, it's 12 years abatement for a rehab, a remodel. It's 15 years on new construction. So when you look at 12 or 15 years in the life of a property versus the entire useful life of the property, over who knows how many years, it's significant. So I think we're getting a very good rate of return and return on investment for the CRAs. So that's what I was tasked with by Councilman Marmee. I'm glad he did. I learned something from this. It's always nice to put some numbers and something very tangible to something that can seem a little bit abstract at times when we just start talking about tax abatements and property values. So I'll be glad to help answer any questions you might have on this.
Any questions from the committee? Any questions from the audience? Go ahead.
Stephen Smith, 237 Violet Court, Newark. I would like to wonder if we could have this spreadsheet made available to us publicly.
Absolutely.
So if through the website or in some manner. Or other.
Yeah, we can. Let's follow up afterwards, and I'll get you a copy. I'll forward it on to you.
Sure.
Any other questions from the audience? Mark, thank you for coming up and doing the research. Really appreciate it. I think it's exactly what we're looking for, and I would have to concur that the short-term deferment of the taxes offers long-term growth opportunities for the community. So thank you so much.
And I'll give a kudos to the Licking County Auditor's Office for helping me put those numbers together.
Thank you so much. With that, we'll stand adjourned for the Economic Development Committee, and we'll take a recess until council starts at 7. Thank you, everybody.